April 1986. Radar screens lit up as Libyan missiles streaked skyward. In a cockpit sealed at 80,000 feet, Major Brian Schul and Walter Watson prepared for a flight no human had ever attempted, pushing the SR-71 Blackbird so far beyond its limits that even NASA engineers would later question the telemetry. Why risk everything for a single mission across the world's deadliest airspace? What happened next shattered every rule of the Cold War skies. Warning tones pierced the cockpit as digital blips multiplied across the threat display. Libyan missile batteries had locked on and fired. Surface-to-air missiles, likely SA-2s and SA-4s, streaked upward from launch sites near Tripoli and Benghazi, their radar signatures spiking in jagged waves on the screens. The SR-71 sensors registered multiple launches. More than one site had fired. Each missile was capable of Mark V, designed to hunt bombers at the edge of the atmosphere. On the ground, Gaddafi's crews had spent years waiting for this moment, tracking the world's fastest jet as it crossed at the invisible line of death over the Gulf of Sidra. Inside the pressurized cabin, the air was thin and hot. The crew's pressure suits hissed with oxygen, gloves gripping controls slick with condensation. The Blackbird's titanium skin had already begun to expand in the heat, seams growing by nearly an inch as the jet sliced through the stratosphere. Every instrument needle trembled. Missile warning lights blinked in rapid succession. 1, 2, 3, then a fourth. The radio remained silent. There would be no help from tankers or escort fighters now. At this altitude, the only defense was speed. Missiles arced skyward, their contrails twisting against the blue-black horizon. The ground-based radars tracked the SR-71 position, feeding targeting data to guidance computers. Inside the jet, the crew's heartbeat synced to the rising pitch of the threat receiver. The margin for error was razor-thin. A single course correction could cost precious seconds, but hesitation meant death. The SR-71 sensors painted a picture of chaos below, radar sights jumping to full power, missile batteries cycling through reloads, the entire Libyan air defense network surging to maximum alert. The crew had trained for this scenario, but nothing in the simulator compared to the real thing. The Blackbird was not armed. There were no counter-missiles, no chaff or flares, just the raw promise of Mark 3.2 and the hope that titanium and jet fuel would outrun everything the enemy could throw. The decision now was simple and absolute. Push the throttles past the detent, trust the engines, and escape into the thin air above 80,000 feet. The world's deadliest airspace had become a crucible, and only speed would decide who survived. Brian Schul stared at the yellow tape winding around his wrists, the hiss of oxygen filling his helmet. The ritual of suiting up for the SR-71 was more than procedure. It was a final moment of quiet before entering a world where a mistake could mean instant death. Schul and his reconnaissance systems officer, Major Walter Watson, had done this dance together many times, but today the stakes pressed in from every side. Technicians checked every seal on their full pressure suits, tugging at zippers, inspecting the heavy gloves and boots designed for the edge of space. The suits themselves were lifelines, engineered to keep a human alive at altitudes where the outside air was nearly a vacuum, and temperatures swung from searing to sub-zero in seconds. Inside the small prep room at RAF Mildenhall, the crew moved through a silent choreography. Schul's mind ticked through the checklist, helmet locked, comms live, oxygen flowing. Watson, always methodical, tested the rear cockpit's camera controls, his voice calm and clipped over the intercom. The pressure suit's weight pressed down on their shoulders, a reminder of the altitude they would soon chase. Schul later described the moment as stepping into a titanium cocoon sealed off from the world, trusting only in the machine and the man behind him. As the crew walked out to tail number 6417960, every step felt heavier. The ground crew moved with hushed urgency, aware that this was not just another reconnaissance run. Schul remembered the sensation of his visor fogging as he breathed, the smell of rubber and metal, the distant roar of the J-58 engines spinning up. Each movement was deliberate. Straps tightened, gloves snapped, helmet visor pulled down and locked. The world narrowed to the cockpit, a cramped space filled with dials, warning lights, and the ever-present hum of the life support system. Watson's role was to manage the sensors, radios, and jamming gear, his hands steady even as the tension built. Schul, hands on the throttles, felt the familiar jolt of adrenaline. In his memoir, he wrote about the moment before takeoff. You are not just strapping into a jet, you are betting your life on the machine's ability to keep you alive at the edge of what is possible. The pressure suit became a second skin, isolating him from the world outside, but sharpening every sense inside the cockpit. As the canopy lowered and locked, the crew was alone. 2 men in a black Arrow, ready to push beyond anything the Air Force had officially sanctioned. The ritual was complete. There was no turning back. The throttles slid forward, locking into the afterburner detent with a metallic click. Twin J-58 engines roared to life, each gulping fuel and spitting blue fire as the Blackbird surged ahead. The cockpit vibrated as the jet leapt past Mach 3.3, the needle pressing against the edge of the gauge. At this altitude, 80,000 feet, the horizon curved and the sky had faded from blue to deep indigo. Every surface inside the cockpit radiated heat. The titanium skin outside stretched and groaned, panels shifting as the airframe absorbed temperatures hotter than a pizza oven. Schul's visor picked up the faint orange glow, reflecting off the nacelles, proof that the afterburners were running at maximum, the only thing standing between the crew and the missiles clawing their way up from the desert below. Schul later described the sensation as riding a controlled explosion. The pressure suit felt tighter, squeezing his chest as the G-forces pressed him into the seat. Left hand full forward, maximum afterburner, he recalled. You could feel the airplane straining, wanting to go even faster. At these speeds, the world outside blurred. Every second counted. The only defense was to keep accelerating, trusting the machine to hold together as the world's fastest jet became its own escape plan. With the Libyan coast shrinking behind them, the SR-71's cameras began their silent work. Housed in the jet's nose and bays, the optical bar and infrared sensors swept over the bombed airfields and barracks, capturing every scar on the desert floor. Walter Watson, focused and unflinching, monitored the readouts as the cameras cycled through their programmed runs. Each frame snapped at over 3 miles per second, yet the images would later reveal individual vehicles, shattered hangars, and the precise outlines of craters left by the F-111 strikes. Analysts at RAF Mildenhall and back in the United States pored over the negatives, stunned by the sharpness. Even after a flight that pushed the Blackbird past Mach 3.2, the reconnaissance photos were crisp enough to confirm the destruction of key targets. The bomb damage assessment left little doubt. Every high-value site Reagan's planners had ordered hit was visible, mapped, and measured. The intelligence haul justified every risk. For the Air Force, the proof lay not in the speed or altitude, but in the crystal clarity of the evidence delivered frame by frame from the edge of the stratosphere. In a quiet corner of NASA's tracking center, a routine scan of the Mediterranean returned an entry so unexpected it left engineers searching for answers. The log, time-stamped April 15, 1986, recorded a contact moving at speeds and altitudes that defied every known flight profile. The notation in the margin penned by a systems engineer read simply, "Verify." Years of orbital tracking had taught these teams to trust their instruments, but nothing in the database matched the signature streaking across the upper atmosphere that morning. The numbers suggested a high-altitude object moving at more than 3 times the speed of sound, but the altitude was too low for any satellite, and the speed was impossible for any known aircraft. The data sparked a brief exchange among the engineers. Could any human survive those conditions? The answer, buried in the classified world of reconnaissance, was flying thousands of miles away. 2 men sealed in titanium, pushing the limits of what anyone believed was possible. For a moment, even NASA's most seasoned analysts were left with nothing but questions and a silent line on a tracking chart, proof that the Blackbird's legacy was not just speed, but the ability to confound even those who studied the boundaries of flight. Today, no aircraft matches the SR-71 speed or altitude. In an age of satellites and drones, the need for human daring hasn't vanished. It's just harder to spot. The Blackbird's legacy endures as a reminder. There are still heights only courage can reach. What would you risk everything to see?